I'm Alan Kenny, Editorial Director with REIT.com, and we're in Washington, D.C. at the Marriott Marquis Hotel for REITWise2016, NAREIT's Law, Accounting, and Finance Conference. I'm joined by Ken Kies, Managing Director with Federal Policy Group. So Ken, if Republicans don't take the House, Senate, and White House, what are the chances of fundamental tax reform in 2017?
Well, okay, so the likelihood that the Republicans would lose the House is pretty low. Trump has really excited the whole election picture, but Democrats didn't see it coming, so they didn't really recruit top-tier candidates to try and take out House members. So Republicans probably keep the House, but if they lose the White House, they probably lose the Senate. And if that's the scenario that plays out, the probability of tax reform in 2017, I have to say, is pretty low, because the two parties ideologically on tax reform have gotten pretty far apart from one another. These are not the good old days of the 1986 Tax Reform Act, which was very bipartisan. They're not even the good old days of the 97 budget deal, which was a pretty big tax cut, which was very bipartisan. The lack of bipartisanship is the worst it's probably been in many decades, if not our lifetimes. And so, bottom line, if that's the scenario we're looking at, Republicans have the House, but not the Senate or the White House. Not a very high probability of tax reform, less than 20%.
And we have a pretty good idea who the Democratic nominee is going to be for president, but we're still up in the air about Republicans. But even so, do you expect to hear more kind of concrete details about tax plans coming up, and any idea what the primary differences might be?
With respect to the Republicans, the three competing candidates right now, which are Kasich, Cruz, and Trump, have actually very different tax plans. Kasich is a much more traditional, broaden the base, lower rates with the current kind of income tax system. Cruz is pretty far out there, eliminate or cap interest deductibility, lower rates, territorial system. Trump's all over the place, eliminate the estate tax. And so they're three pretty different. But to answer your question of do I expect more details when we get into the fall, not really. Because you know what, for the most part, people are not choosing a candidate based on their tax plan. Presidential elections are popularity contests. They're about voting for somebody that you feel good about leading you, as opposed to what's their tax plan, what's their Social Security plan, what's their plan for who's going to win the World Series. So I actually don't expect to see a lot more detail beyond what people have already put out there to date.
And you touched on this a little bit in the last question, but if Donald Trump is in fact the Republican nominee, how do you think that affects congressional races in this upcoming election? Okay,
so I did touch on a little bit. In terms of the House, I don't think all that much. It could be a significant factor in a number of critical Senate elections that Republicans are defending seats in. And those include Wisconsin, where Ron Johnson is running for re-election, Kirk in Illinois. Those are the two most vulnerable Republicans. And then in the next tier of vulnerables are Portman in Ohio, Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, Kelly Ayotte in New Hampshire, and defending the Florida seat, which is a vacant seat because Rubio, after he stepped out of the presidential, decided not to run for re-election. Those four seats are going to be difficult for Republicans to hold on to if Trump's their nominee and he's losing. On the other hand, if Trump's their nominee and he's winning, maybe it helps them, and it may help them pick up a couple seats that Democrats have to defend. The two seats that people are looking at that Democrats are defending are Nevada, where Harry Reid's retiring, and Bennett in Colorado. People had thought Colorado had gone way blue, but the Republicans beat Udall in 2014, a little bit of a surprise, and so it picked off a Democrat, part of the reason they got back control of the Senate. And so Colorado's maybe a little more interesting than people thought it was, although it's kind of the outlier in terms of all those races I just talked about.
Well, Ken, thank you so much for your time.
No, my pleasure.
And for more on this and other REIT news and analysis, be sure to visit REIT.com.